What's going on, you guys? This is your boy RBG bringing you another video on Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. And I wanted to make a topic regarding something that the DBZ fandom has been talking about since the trailer launched for this game. And that's if it's a true successor slash sequel to Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 or Dragon Ball Raging Blast 2. Because although both of these games from each of their respective series shares the same basic idea, many fans have made it a point to showcase why they are so different and why Sparking Zero should expand on one of these titles' formula. If you notice, many people have agreed that this feels more like a sequel to Tenkaichi 3 based off of the footage we've gotten showcasing that they are using one-to-one combos exactly from that game. Not to mention that it bears the subtitle name Sparking like the original Japanese titles did for the Tenkaichi games. You got Tenkaichi 1, which is originally called Dragon Ball Z Sparking, Tenkaichi 2, which is originally called Dragon Ball Z Sparking Neo, and Tenkaichi 3, which is originally called Dragon Ball Z Sparking Meer, and now we have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which, let's call a spade here. If it was translated to a Western name, it would most likely be called Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4, since it's the fourth installment in the Sparking series. It's already been noted that this release of the game will mark the first time in Budokai Tenkaichi history where the Japanese name of the series Sparking is used internationally. Not to mention that the officials have already confirmed that this is in fact a direct sequel to Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, so we can go ahead and put those theories to bed on which series this game is going to take place after. It is, for all intents and purposes, a Tenkaichi game at heart and visuals. But I want to talk about why Spike Chunsoft ultimately came to this decision, because there seems to be this big divide between the fandom. While the vocal majority seems to be very hyped about getting a continuation in the Tenkaichi series, there are just as many fans who feels like that should be the case when it comes to Raging Blast, and I can honestly see from both sides of the spectrum why they think these things. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and be honest, I'm more pro Tenkaichi because that's the era that I grew up in. Although I did grow up playing the Raging Blast games, I felt like they paled in comparison to all the things that were offered in the Tenkaichi series. But I feel like the Raging Blast series did a lot of new things that were interesting, just not fully realized. Which is why the RB fandom felt like they should have gotten a third installment that had all those features properly polished up and ready to be played with. One of the most noted features would have to be the cancel system, which allows players to actually cancel during combos. Many players felt like this was a welcomed addition to the Tenkaichi style of gameplay, since it allowed players to actually string up combos and change them to their liking mid-combo. It undoubtedly added an extra layer of complexity to the gameplay, because usually when it comes to battle arena type games, they are very simple in nature. They're more targeted towards an audience that just wants to pick up and play a game without learning all the ins and outs there is to know about combos, kind of like how it is in the fighting game community. But the cancel system allowed certain players to stand out amongst the fold if they knew what they were doing, especially while playing against others online. Like, you could really see where Spike Chunsoft was going with this mechanic, and a lot of people appreciated it, but there were just as many people who felt like this new feature was a downgrade from what was established in BT3. You see, with Budokai Tenkaichi 3, they had these very complex combos as well. Like, even though they didn't necessarily have a cancel system in place, they did have a lengthy set of combos you can perform in that game. And as I mentioned earlier, the systems in Raging Blast are very similar to that of the Tenkaichi series. They're basically built on the bones of Tenkaichi 3, if you ask me. Like, Goku feels very similar to his last gen counterpart, but the cancel system makes him feel like a script down version of his former self, if that makes any sense. For some strange reason, the combo just felt a lot more slower and clunky, and given the fact that this game borrows a lot of assets from Budokai Tenkaichi 3, especially when it comes to the combat, a lot of the combos look a lot more janky. You can tell that the animations were intended to be longer, but they've been cut down so the cancel feature can work. And if you were one of those players who were jumping off of Tenkaichi into this game, you could feel that. You could feel that familiarity, but you instantly noticed that some of the animations and frames were missing from those combos. And looking back on this, I honestly feel like if Spike wanted this new cancel system to work, they should have developed some new animations to coincide with it. Many RB players would argue that this allowed for more distinction between each character compared to that of Budokai Tenkaichi 3 that had a lot of characters that played and functioned the same. And yeah, that was the case, but I honestly believe that was a part of the charm of the game as well, because yes, although those characters do function the same, they at least had their own animations and speed to make them stand out from one another. Not to mention that your combos could actually be completed, and you can do follow-ups to those combos, but you don't feel like you can do that in Raging Blast 2. The cancel system is such a huge aspect of the gameplay, they completely overshadow the small differences from Budokai Tenkaichi 3, like different smash attacks for the characters. Another thing that Tenkaichi players felt like was a big downgrade was the actual heads-up display for the characters. In most cases, Dragon Ball Z games usually feature a horizontal health bar, but Spike decided to switch it up and go for a circular heads-up display. I'm not sure why they did this, like maybe you could say it allows for more immersion since most of the health bar doesn't take up the screen like it did in the Tenkaichi games, and maybe it emulates what the Saiyans see through their scouters, but for me it just doesn't work. It makes it feel like I have less health and energy than I would have in the previous games, not to mention that the devs decided to get rid of the blast stocks, which were these mini vertical bars located under the health bar. Depending on how many of them you had would determine if you were able to pull off an ultimate finisher or not. But in Raging Blast 2, you get this energy bar that's connected to the main circle bar on the heads up display, and it allows you to do consecutive ultimates back to back without actually working up to that point. It's very easy to pull off an ultimate 2 times back to back, one after another. Since we're on the topic of ultimate attacks, we gotta talk about the beam struggles, because that's something that a lot of fans really want in every Dragon Ball Z game, the ability to go back and forth with your friend or the computer using an ultimate attack, you know, deciding which one's gonna land, whether by pressing buttons or going the traditional route of Budokai where you have to rotate the analog sticks. There was really no limit to this in Tenkaichi 3. It didn't really matter if you had something like an energy ball finisher, you could still go up against something like a spirit bomb. But in Raging Blast 2, some of the beams don't collide with other beams, specifically when it comes to ultimates. So if you're gonna go up against a more powerful attack per se, the actual spirit bomb, then you're shit out of luck. So yeah. But anyways, I think the final thing that we're going to compare are the actual aesthetics of the two games. And I already know that people are going to say this is an unfair thing to do because we're essentially comparing the graphics of 2 different games from 2 different console generations, one being the PlayStation 2 and the other being the PlayStation 3, but I think that it's all about the presentation and charm at the end of the day, which both games have in their own unique way, but I feel like Budokai Tenkaichi 3 just has that charm factor down. One of the biggest issues that I had with the character models in Raging Blast was that they look like they've been laminated, like they have a very plastic look to them that makes them look like action figures in motion, if you know what I mean. And they look rounder compared to what you would see them like up in the actual anime. But despite Budokai Tenkaichi 3 being on limited hardware, Spike was able to push the PS2 to its limits and make the characters look like they've been pulled right off the pages of the manga, which was and still is very impressive. Like for example, if you didn't have a keen eye, right, and you looked at a PNG cutout image of one of these character models, you would easily mistake them for one of the characters that Akira Toriyama drew by hand. That's the charm that I'm talking about there. That's not to say that Raging Blast 2 looks bad in any kind of way, because I think that game has a lot of visual flair too, especially when it comes to the graphics as a whole. Like I think the stages absolutely stomp the Tenkaichi 3 stages, but that's all due largely in part to the hardware that it's on. It's on the PlayStation 3 and 360, so of course the developers are going to have an easier time developing those things. But I just kind of find it funny that the character models don't look as good as the ones from the previous generation. But as I can tell, Spike looks like they're taking it back to the basics, because these newer models for Sparking Zero have that same layer of charm that they had in the yesteryears. The character models, in my opinion, are the best that they've ever been, and I've commented this on other videos, and people have argued the fact that Arc System still has that title with the Fighter Z characters, and to some extent I agree with that. Like there's something about Arc System works where they can allow these characters to move like an anime character can and emote more expressively. They developed a unique system that allows the creators to manually distort the models depending on the angle of the camera, which means that not only are they animating the character's rig, but they're animating the model itself for each animation, which is why it looks like a screenshot from the series anytime you pause the game. But it does come with one interesting caveat. Because of the sheer amount of detail added to each individual fighter within Dragon Ball Z Fighters, that means that they can't do in-game transformations, because that would just be more work for the animators. Not to mention that you can only swap out the colors. You can't pick any alternate costumes, but you can can in fact do this in the Tenkaichi series, and you're most likely going to be able to do it in Sparking Zero. Not to mention that although the characters in Sparking Zero don't boast the same amount of expressiveness that they do in Fighters, they still feel on par with it. The colors are a lot more rich, and the lighting effects look superior. And I know I'm comparing this new game to a game that's 6 years old now, but Fighters is that game that looks the best right now. Like, some would argue that it's Kakarot, but I believe that Fighters has that visual fidelity that really encapsulates everything that the anime had to offer. I think Sparking Zero is going to take everything in terms of the quality of the character models from Fighters and meld that with the visual fidelity of the environments from Kakarot. So yeah. But anyways guys, that's all I got for you today. I just wanted to put out this quick video talking about why this game was the true successor to Tenkaichi 3 and not that of Raging Blast 2. I'm pretty sure people will disagree with some of my reasonings, but hey, that's what it's all about. It's all about creating that dialogue at the end of the day. Be on the lookout for my next video where I go into detail on features I think they should include from the Raging Blast game into Sparking Zero and other DBZ games developed by Spike, because I feel like there is a hefty amount of things they can add to make it a ultimate Tenkaichi game. Not to be confused with that Ultimate Tenkaichi game that was trash all those years ago, so yeah. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you agree that this should be the successor of Tenkaichi 3? Or do you feel like Raging Blast 2 should have gotten that proper continuation it deserved? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you truly enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on all the different social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But once again, this is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.